Thank you, Tanya. And as always, thank you, Minister Patrice. The disciples were overwhelmed by grief to the point of silence. I don't know if you know what that's like. One moment you're asking all kinds of questions, and then something changes, and it's like the questions don't matter anymore. That's how it seems to be in John chapter 16. The same questions that the disciples were just asking 2 chapters before, they don't seem worth voicing in this moment of loss. Listen to the words of Jesus in John chapter 16, verse 5 and 6. He says, "But now I'm going away to the one who sent me, and not one of you is asking where I'm going. Instead, you grieve because of what I've told you." I mean, Jesus is basically saying to the disciples, I know you already feel the loss. Our relationship is changing. It's not going to be like it used to be, and you don't yet understand how it's going to be. And as hard as it is for you to believe this, my absence is of great benefit to you. And that's what Jesus says right there in verse 7. He says, "But in fact, it is best for you that I go away, because if I don't, the advocate won't come. If I do go away, then I will send him to you." You may remember from a couple of weeks ago, we tackled that question of, is anything better than having Jesus with you? And we came to the conclusion that the only thing better than having Jesus with you is having the Spirit of Jesus in you. The Holy Spirit is called the advocate here. But you may remember from about 3 weeks ago, we talked about the Greek word for advocate. It's paraclete. And it means the one called us to the side to help. That's the quite literal meaning. But when they heard it, when his disciples heard him use that word paraclete back 2,000 years ago, they actually heard 4 words at the same time. You see, our language is just too weak to convey what they were thinking. When he said paraclete, they heard advocate, comforter, counselor, and encourager. But in verse 7, there's something that we haven't covered, even though we've talked some about verse 7 already. There's something kind of extraordinary I just would like to point out to you. You okay? You sure you're okay? Okay. Verse 7, let me read it to you again. "But in fact, it is best for you that I go away, because if I don't, the advocate won't come. If I do go away, then I will send him to you." You see, anytime Jesus talks about his going away here in this context, it means that Jesus is going to be apprehended. He's going to be found guilty in a kangaroo court of trumped up charges. He's going to be executed in the Roman way, which is crucifixion. He's going to be dead and in a tomb for over the span of 3 days. Then he will be raised from the dead, and then after a while he will ascend into the heaven to sit at the right hand of God the Father. That's what he means when he says, I am going away. He means all of that, which is a pretty big chunk of our faith. Yeah? And so, when Jesus is saying, if I don't go away, the advocate, the Holy Spirit, won't come, I want you just to connect the dots there. Jesus is saying The cost of you and me having the Holy Spirit in us is his arrest, his trial, his brutal beating, his torture, his crucifixion, his death, his burial. That's the cost for you and me having the Holy Spirit in us. So when you realize that's pretty much what he's saying in verse 7, well, then engaging with the Holy Spirit, learning to listen to the Holy Spirit speak to you, cooperating with the Holy Spirit, being with the Holy Spirit, growing closer to the Holy Spirit, all of those things that we've talked about in past weeks with us and the Holy Spirit, they're not optional. I mean, if it was worth Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection for us to have the Spirit of Christ in us, then all of those things aren't just nice options that come with the newest version of the car. Let me ask a question. And William, you feel free to answer this for me, okay, buddy? Who here knows what a hat trick is?
3 times. When you do something 3 times, there's something called a hat trick when you do the same thing 3 times in a row.
You were absolutely correct. 3 times. William, you want to elaborate on that?
I thought it was a soccer thing.
It is. That's very good. So one of the main places a hat trick takes place is in soccer. When one player scores 3 goals in the same match, it's called a hat trick. The same is true in hockey. If you get 3 goals in one game, the same player, it's called a hat trick. Now the question is, does anyone know where hat trick comes from, the term hat trick? Well, I'm glad you asked me. Evidently, in 1858, H.H. Stevenson scored 3 wickets in 3 pitches in a game of cricket in England. Now, if you don't know what cricket is, that's just as well. You'll never understand it. But because the team that Stevenson was on won, the people who bet on his team were so excited that they put some of their money together and bought him a hat. Thus, hat trick. Now, whether that's true or not, I can't tell you. I wasn't alive back then. But that's basically what it means, what Karen said. 3 wins in a row, 3 scores in a row or 3 scores by the same player, 3 home runs in the same game by the same player. It's a hat trick. If I'm reading this correctly, Jesus says that when the Holy Spirit came to live with us, part of his function is to pull a hat trick. It says it right there in verse 8. I'm not making this up. Verse 8, and when he comes, he'll convict the world of sin, he'll convict and of God's righteousness, and of the coming judgment. Hat trick. You see that? Convict the world of sin, righteousness, and the coming judgment. The Holy Spirit will convict the world of sin, righteousness, and the coming judgment. And just in case you and me and the disciples don't understand what that means, Jesus explains it in verses 9 through 11. The world's sin is that it refuses to believe in me. Righteousness is available because I go to the Father and you will see me no more. Judgment will come because the ruler of this world has been judged. I really like the Kenneth West expanded edition here. So let me share that translation with you. And having come, that one will convict the world with respect to sin, and with respect to righteousness, and with respect to judgment. With respect to sin, on the one hand, because they are not believing on me. With respect to righteousness, on the other hand, because the Father I am going away, or because to the Father I am going away, and no longer are you seeing me. And with respect to judgment, because the ruler of this world has been judged and is now under judgment. Now, these are three profound statements. The Holy Spirit has come to convict the world because they don't understand sin. The world does not understand sin. Sin is not about morality. Sin is about failing to believe in Jesus. All sin flows back to one place, and that is refusal to believe in Jesus. Now, the Holy Spirit has come to convict the world of righteousness because the world got that one wrong as well. You see, the world determined that Jesus was ungodly, unholy, and ungood. But Jesus is returning to the Father in heaven, all right? Have you thought about that? Jesus is returning to the Father in heaven where he's going to be seated at the right hand of the Father? Well, the only way he can do that is if he is holy and he is godly and he is good. And then lastly, the Holy Spirit has come to convict the world of judgment because the world believes that the verdict is still out regarding what will happen at the end of time. But the verdict is already in. The ruler of this world has been judged and is already under judgment. It's just like a chicken with its head chopped off. Now, you might think that I'm making this up, but if we were to live in the country and you were to decide the morning that we should have chicken for dinner that night, you may go out back and you might chop off the chicken's head. But you know what? Even after you've chopped off the chicken's head and the chicken is dead, the body flops around. I mean, it can flop around for a while, too. It's crazy. The body doesn't know that it's dead yet, and so it flops around. Well, just like a chicken with its head chopped off, the ruler of this world is flopping around like the outcome of this war is yet to be decided, and it has already been decided, and he loses. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Holy Spirit's hat trick. Now, some of you might remember that I told you some time ago that this passage was about the Holy Spirit convicting us individually of sin and righteousness and judgment. Each one of us as followers of Jesus individually. Well, I was wrong. This passage about the conviction that the Holy Spirit brings, this passage is about the conviction that the Holy Spirit brings to the world. You see, as you already know, when John talks about the world in the Gospel of John, the majority of the time he's talking about non-believers, those who have not believed or who refuse to believe. Generally, he does not mean believers. So, John is very clear that as followers of Jesus, we've been called out from this world. And his hat trick is clearly about the world. See verse 8? And when he comes, he will convict the world of its sin and of God's righteousness and of the coming judgment. So I just want to say I was wrong. Now you might be thinking, well, how do I know that you're not wrong now? And the answer to that is you don't. So I guess you're going to need to go home, study for yourself, and decide if what I'm saying, what I'm teaching is accurate or not. And if you decide that what I'm teaching is not accurate, then I would ask you to come back and tell me and try to convince me that I'm wrong. And then if you do convince me I'm wrong, I will stand up. I'll even invite you to come up and stand up next to me. And once again, I'll say what I just said. I'm wrong. Cool? Excellent. Moving on. Anybody here know what a loofah is? A loofah. Yes. Oh, it's not a trick question. It's a loofah. You know, it's made like of nylon or plastic, like a net, and except it's like a sponge, but it's not a sponge, and it's all like round and stuff. And you put your soap in it, and then you lather all up. And my bride tells me that when I use my loofah, I am exfoliating. I am exfoliating. I cannot spell exfoliate, but I am exfoliating. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's just a fancy washcloth, as best I can tell. Okay? Now, here's the thing about the loofah, though, and this is the thing that I find amazing, is that once you've washed, you know, got behind your ears and everything with your loofah, you go to rinse it out, and there are more suds. And you go to rinse it out, and there are more suds, and you rinse it out, and the more. It's like this internal overflow of soap. It's just so full of soap. Nobody would ever think to put more than one dab of soap in their loofah because the bathroom would be full of suds, right? That is basically what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying to his disciples in verse 12, there is so much more I want to tell you, but you can't bear it now. You guys are like a soapy loofah. If I add more soap, it would just be a waste. It's not the disciples' fault. It's not that they aren't interested or don't have enough faith or any of that kind of nonsense. They simply have reached their saturation point, and Jesus realizes that. And so, they and we, so that we don't think that we're going to miss out, Jesus says in verse 13, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth. He'll not speak on his own, but will tell you what he has heard. He'll tell you about the future. He'll bring glory by telling you whatever he receives from me. All that belongs to the Father is mine. This is why I said, the Spirit will tell you whatever he receives from me. So first of all, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide us into all truth. That's really important for you to notice. He's not just going to inform us. He's not going to educate us. He's going to guide us. And the image behind the language is a lot like when the Israelites were delivered from bondage. Do you remember hearing about that? When the Israelites were delivered from Egypt from 400 years of bondage, when they went out during the day as they traveled, God had this great pillar of cloud in front of them. When they traveled at night, there was this great pillar of fire leading them. That's the image. The Holy Spirit guiding us into truth, just like that. And secondly, the Holy Spirit, he's not going to speak on his own. He's going to speak what he hears from Jesus and the Father. He's not making this stuff up. He's not guessing. He's communicating exactly what he hears. Do any of you guys remember, well, most of you won't, but Coach, remember when there were those Ma Bell commercials back in the 70s? Remember when we had the rotary phone and call waiting was new? Remember when it was new? It was so cool. You could just hang up and somebody else was on the phone. It was the most exciting thing. And Ma Bell, she had, this is probably before she was all busted up, Ma Bell, she had the best commercials. I remember this one. It's little Jimmy and his grandpa, and they're fishing. And Jimmy looks up at his grandpa and he says, "Grandpa, I wish I could stay with you all year round." And Grandpa looks down at Jimmy and says, "Me too. Me too." And then there's a voiceover. Now, with the new long-distance calling by Bell telephone, you may not be able to spend the year together, but it will be the next best thing to being there. That's what Jesus is saying. He's saying the Holy Spirit speaking on behalf of God the Father and God the Son is the next best thing to being there. And third, Jesus says that the Holy Spirit who lives in us will tell us about the future. He will reveal to you concerning what hasn't happened yet. Now you may be thinking, what kind of future? What kind of stuff is he going to tell us? I don't know. I'm not the Holy Spirit. I just know he's going to tell you about the future. So I'd have a conversation and see what happens. And then fourth, verse 14, he will bring me glory by telling you whatever he receives from me. When John talks about the Holy Spirit bringing glory to Jesus, most of the time it means to reveal. He reveals Jesus to us. That's when the Holy Spirit brings glory. He reveals Jesus to us. The Holy Spirit reveals the Son. And then lastly, verse 15, all that belongs to the Father is mine. This is why I said the Spirit will tell you whatever he receives from me. God the Father and God the Son are equals. Jesus the Son, also known as the Word, and the Holy Spirit are equals. So all three, the Trinity, is in perfect community. The three persons of the Godhead: Father, Son, Word, Spirit, all together. So everything the Holy Spirit receives from Jesus is also from God the Father. Just like the Son, the same is true for the Father with regard to the Holy Spirit being with us. Now, this passage that we just flew through, okay, maybe it didn't feel like flying to you, but this passage that we just flew through, this passage is one of the most densely packed passages in all of the Bible concerning the Holy Spirit. God the Father gave his Son so that we could have the Holy Spirit. God the Son sacrificed his life so that we could have the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit has given himself so that we can have the Holy Spirit. You know, sometimes it's difficult to have someone read a passage to us, especially if it seems like a complicated passage, because, you know, we can't spend time thinking about it or going back over the part that we missed, those sorts of things. But at the risk of not doing justice to this passage from Jürgen Moltmann's book, The Spirit of Life, A Universal Affirmation, I'd like to read it to you. In this passage, Moltmann, who is arguably one of the greatest theologians of our time, at least one of the greatest English-speaking theologians of our time, attempts to answer a simple question. And the question he answers in this passage is, what do I love when I love God? Moltmann writes, answer, when I love God, I love the beauty of bodies, the rhythm of movements, the shining of eyes, the embraces, the feelings, the scents, the sounds of all this protean creation. When I love you, my God, I want to embrace it all, for I love you with all of my senses in the creations of your love. In all the things that encounter me, you are waiting for me. For a long time, I looked for you within myself and crept into the shell of my soul, protecting myself with an armor of unapproachability. But you were outside myself, and enticed me out of the narrowness of my heart into the broad place of love for life. So I came out of myself and found my soul and my senses and my own self and others. The experience of God deepens the experiences of life. It does not reduce them, for it awakens the unconditional yes to life. The more I love God, the more gladly I exist. I love that. The more I love God, the more gladly I exist. The more immediately and wholly I exist, the more I sense the living God, the inexhaustible well of life and of life's eternity. Ladies and gentlemen, the Holy Spirit deepens our experience of God, deepens our love of God, and deepens our awareness of the living God. And so it is the Holy Spirit that we must daily, hourly, minute by minute, gladly surrender. And I hope you think about that, okay?